most of us, and I always mention me, are so unaware of what we're doing. We think it's us. We think that's who I am. And we never stop to realize, how did I learn to be who I am?
From Paul Zappa, General Manager of Primary Prevention and Community Development with the Men's Project at Jesuit Social Services. In society, we're often presented with this idea that a real man behaves in a certain way, is emotionally aloof, should be strong and financially successful. This is something that's never really sat well with me, as I believe compassion, respect, and being a good person is infinitely more important than fulfilling an outdated stereotype of masculinity. Redefining what it means to be a man is something that I feel very strongly about, and something I believe that will lead us towards a better tomorrow. So when I was looking for a Dirrum speaker earlier this year, I wanted to find someone who kind of shared that idea. And it led me to stumble upon something called the Man Box Study, which was a survey of 1,000 men in Australia aged between 18 and 30. And this study revealed that belief in archaic masculine stereotypes, beliefs that constitute the man box, can make men more prone to violence, sexual harassment, and more prone to having mental illnesses. In his work with the Men's Project, Paul has dedicated himself to supporting boys and young men to extract themselves from the man box and its stereotypes, thus allowing them to live respectful, accountable lives free from violence and behavior that is harmful to themselves and others. Now, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce Paul to you, and he will explain the man box, how young men can break free of its rules, and how this will lay stepping stones to a better tomorrow. Thank you.
My name's Paul Zappa. I do work for the Men's Project, as beautifully introduced by our wonderful Oliver, and it was wonderful that he introduced it in such a way. My passion about men and masculinity has come about through a personal journey, and it was lovely to hear the previous speaker talk about her journey. In similar ways, I decided that we needed to do something in the space of men and violence. And that came about through my own personal journeys as an educator. And then I worked in mainstream schools with young people. And I tended to find that I enjoyed working with those kids who struggled in their day-to-day world. And the passion for me became, how do I work with more young people who are disengaging from school? And I went and worked in a community setting, and that community setting allowed me to work with disengaged young kids. And they taught me more in 2 years than I learned in the previous 16 years of mainstream education. I want to share with you something that I've learned on this journey for the last 15 years about how we can start to unpack men and masculinity. So if the audience, you're sitting there in the audience and want you to do something for me, I want you to fold your arms for me and just do an arm fold. So I'm imagining that you guys are doing that. Have a look at your arm fold technique. You may never have noticed before, but you actually have a technique. And I'm right hand up, left hand down. Unfold your arms and then refold them again. And it should be really comfortable and really enjoying this. Try something for me now. Do a reverse arm fold. So reverse it. If I know the audience right now, you're kind of having a bit of a laugh and it feels really awkward. And this concept is the first moment sometimes we realize that we've got all these habits that we never realized were there. And what we've learned through the Men's Project and I suppose on my journey for the last 10 years is that we've constructed how masculinity is. It's not something that you're necessarily born with. In fact, gender as a construct is a really fascinating thing to think about. Think about how we even put colours and gender together. Think about you go and buy a present for a young girl and you go and buy a present for a young boy, and what colours do you choose? Think about if you didn't know the gender of a baby and you wanted to buy a present in advance, what colour would you get for that child? All these answers are telling us that we've actually linked colour and gender, which when you think about it is a real nonsense. There's no such thing. In fact, I've been to other places around the world where it's actually reversed. Then there's our Australian culture where I grew up, and at some point in my life, I realised that I'm not allowed to hug my dad anymore. Yet I go to see my cousins in Italy, and the first thing they did when they saw me was hug me, and they kissed me twice. So what's going on with this masculinity? How do we get this? And what we've found is this construct of masculinity has taught us how we should be as men, based on usually our media, our relationships in our sporting clubs, our schools, our peers, and it's all been unquestioned. And as we heard from Oliver before, all that unquestioning means that you can easily grow up like I did in this thing called the man box, which means I operate in here because I think that's what I'm supposed to do. And I look around and all the other men are doing the same thing. And I think, right, I'll do that. It's safe and it's where everyone's at. But for most men, if you look around in there, it's not really a great place necessarily. Our research has said that if you are someone who, like I was, really adhering to stereotypical masculine norms, the real Aussie bloke, if you want to call it that, then you're more likely to be a man who experiences violence from others. You're more likely to be a man who actually commits violence to others. You're actually more likely to be in car accidents. You're more likely to have risk-taking behaviours involving drugs and alcohol. And you're more likely to have mental health issues. In fact, you're twice as likely to have suicidal thoughts in the last 2 weeks than someone who operates outside the man box. So when Oliver says he's thinking about rejecting some of the stereotypes of masculinity, he's operating out of the man box, or at least choosing to. So when I look at Oliver, his life journey is healthier than mine, or what mine was. And my son, who's 14, I'm trying to model to him not what I was like at that age where I had to do what the norm was, but to be someone who considered about what messages am I getting and am I doing them out of the habits? The habits that, like I showed you, you had your arm fold and you didn't even know you had it. Most of us, and I always mention me, are so unaware of what we're doing, we think it's us. We think that's who I am. And we never stop to realize, how did I learn to be who I am? So our next move then is, so Paul, look, you're making sense. It makes sense. I'm listening to the music. I'm watching movies, and I'm learning from my parents and how to be a real man. But it's not good for me. What do I do? So we've come up with a concept called healthier masculinities, something that's got what we call a growth mindset, something that's strength-based and you really, really want to embrace if you're a young person particularly, but as adults and people as old as me can still change their habits. Go back to that arm fold. It's going to be really hard for you to change that arm fold if you decided to try and have a go at that. So habits are hard to change. So we need to get habits in as early as possible. However, if you really want to change your arm fold and you were determined, you could actually change it. So all of us at any age have an opportunity to become a man who embraces healthier ways of being. A really quick way to get you to what we can land on as how do I do healthy masculinities is given to me by a beautiful friend that I work with. She came up with this concept. I want you right now to think of a man in your life that you really admire. And I want men and women to do this. And I want you to think about that man, young man, old man, it doesn't matter. And I want to think about the qualities that you really admire in this person. Now, I want you to imagine someone's come up to you and said, would you mind doing Paul's birthday speech for him? And you go, sure, I'll do that. and you think, you know what I'll do? I'll just talk about his 3 best qualities. So you're writing a bit of paper. Here's the 3 qualities, and I'll just make my whole speech about that. Have you got those 3 qualities right now? I've done this activity thousands of times through COVID online like this. And invariably I get words like, the man I admire is kind, he's caring, he's a listener, he's a role model, he's supportive, he's fun, humorous, adventurous. No one ever talks about the real man things like he's got big muscles, or he doesn't take crap from anyone, or any of these masculine norms that we know about. You know, he doesn't just chase after women all the time and have to have sex with people all the time. All these things that if I watch movies about men, that's what I think I have to be. Yet this guy that you admire doesn't have those. Well, he might have a few, but you admire that he's got these other amazing qualities. So what can we do with that now? I've got 3 words. What do I do about it? Put the word be in front of those words. Put the word be. Imagine if I'm a young person. Imagine I'm any man listening to this right now. Be those. Be humble. Be kind. Be fair. Be a person who can listen before they speak. Be aware. Be aware of the people in your room. Be aware of women in your life. Have they got a voice? And suddenly we can have this discussion where we start empowering our boys to move from inside the man box, which is a constricted place of being. I'm squashed in this man box. I have to do what's in here, to someone who can break free. And we know we've got evidence that says that the health benefits will be better. But we've got one problem. The man box is self-policing, which means that when I'm in the man box, and I grew up in this man box, and I still drift back into it every now and then, if I was to step out of it and I'm with my peers, there's this way of bringing me back in again using language. So if you imagine you're around friends, groups of men particularly, and you did something that wasn't manly in their eyes, and we actually have in Australia, we have a lingo for, excuse my language, we have this thing called, we just hang shit on him. And people almost laugh it off. So we've even got language for this. So if I don't measure up, some gentle words, you can imagine worse ones, are you're soft, you're weak, you're a wuss. And then we have things about linking me to homosexuality, you're gay, you're a faggot, because we think that's a massive put down. And what we're actually doing is saying, get back in the man box, because that's where we all are, and don't let the team down. And our previous speaker said about fear. We're in the man box, and there's a fear of going out of it because you might get harassed by your friends, by your closest friends. And also, we don't know what's out there. We haven't tried it. And I hear about young people like Oliver, and they're on it already, and they can see the benefit. Now we've got evidence that says being in the man box, not good for you. Being in the man box, not good for you, and not good for the people you live with. Not good for you and the people you work with. So there's all this motivation to change. So now, just instead of asking you to change your arm fold, I might come up with you and go, well, I need some motivation. Here's $1,000. Now will you change your arm fold? I might think about that. Well, do you want to get out of the man box? What if I show you that here's the data that says your world and those you love and care for is diminished if you're in it. And there's another place to go. So in the audience right now, what do you do about this? And this is appealing to men and women. This is appealing to people who identify across the whole spectrum of gender. You listen out for those words. So the man box has a weak link. And the weak link is the language, because you can hear it. So when you're around a group of men or in with a group of men, and you hear me saying to one of my mates, you're a wuss, you're a sissy, you're weak, that's your moment. If you do that, however, in front of my mates, and you criticize me, I'm probably going to dig in and bite right back. So you've got to be clever. So here's my piece of advice. You hear me, hang it on my friend and say, don't be a girl. What you can now do is say, hey, Paul, I reckon that's one of those man box words. And he goes, what are you talking about, man box? Oh, haven't you heard about the man box stuff, the research that they've got that says if you do the whole real man Australian Aussie bloke stuff, where you see yourself as the dominant person and you'd be the person who has to earn the money and your partner stays at home and all those belief sets that we all know about. Did you know about that thing? Oh, no. Anyway, what about it? Well, if you have those beliefs, all the research has said it's really bad for you. And you know your son's watching what you do as well. Apparently it's really going to be really bad for him. So suddenly we've got some motivation here. You haven't had a go at me. You said, Paul, just let me stop for a minute. You just had a go at someone and called them a girl, a girl's blouse or whatever. Do you realize what you're doing? That's before you even work out what harm that's having for the young woman who happens to be nearby and hears you using her gender in a derogatory way. So I'm going to wrap up because I know we're going close to the money here. In my life journey, I've suffered my own mental health issues. I've had a business that went for 10 years and then that stopped. So I've had moments in time where I've realized, I suppose, what am I going to do, like our previous speaker spoke about? And this research came in after probably 10 years of working in this space. And it finally gave me that missing piece, which was the motivation for change. I want to give that to you now for the conversations you have with men in your life, i.e. other men, if you're a man or a woman or someone who's on a gender spectrum, any person in your life, and talk to them about the man box behaviors. Our work here is to make it very similar to my previous speaker, get the noise out there, that there's this thing, there's this product that we can use to talk to help men shift from being in the man box to out of it, because we break down the little drivers in there that keep me in here. So listen out for man box words. You'll hear them. Turn them into a discussion, not a criticism. Did you know? Have you realized? Have you heard about the man box? And have a conversation. Far better way to get into men's heads than say, don't do that, you're bad. I've learned that. It's taken me a long time to learn that. And gently land them in a place, and I'll finish on this, that we learned from that birthday speech, that rather than thinking you have to belong into this area where all you think all your friends are, and that's where men hang out, and I can belong, there's another place out there. And it's belonging to the admirable group, the doing the things that people admire, that you just heard about in your birthday speech, and say, have you thought about the fact you are a good listener and that we love the way that you bring your humor? Keep doing more of that. That's what we love about you. Don't fear any criticism from others. Keep going on this journey to being a man who embraces healthier masculinities. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here tonight. I'm sorry for the rough ride. I'm super confident that you've heard every word now. Take this message and have a conversation with people about it. It's something that you can take into your workplace, your sports club, obviously, and your home. If you go to jss.org.au, you will actually be able to go into a thing called the Men's Project, where I work. And we've got videos and data and research, and you can read until much as you want. There's more in there that you can never get through on how we found all this research and how it's been done around the world, and how we've actually got data on Australian men. We've got data on young men in Australia. And between us, this call to action, can we help men get out of the man box? Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I apologise for the rough start. I hope it's resonated with some people. I hope I've given you something that you might be able to do to make some change. And I look forward to hearing about how this went. Thank you, everyone.